So I want you to picture this. You walk into this, like a really crowded, dimly lit bar on a Friday night.
Right, setting the scene.
Yeah, exactly. The air is thick with that, weekend anticipation. The music is loud, just loud enough that you have to lean in to hear anyone. And you're sort of scanning the room.
Just taking it all in.
Right. And over in a corner booth, there's this man sitting by himself. He's nursing a drink, just staring blankly at his phone. And he's perfectly fine looking,
Yeah.
well-dressed. But for all intents and purposes, he is entirely invisible to the room.
Yeah, I mean, he's basically background radiation at that point. He has absolutely no social footprint in that
Yeah,
environment.
exactly. People are just sliding past his table without a second glance. But then the entire dynamic shifts.
Oh, here we go.
A woman approaches his booth, slides in right across from him, and they start chatting. And within a minute, she's laughing, leaning in, touching his arm, like they are clearly hitting it off.
Right, a sudden change in status.
And suddenly, almost like magic, the invisible man is illuminated. You look around the room, and other women at the bar are suddenly, like, glancing his way. They're sizing him up.
He's suddenly on the radar.
Yes. He instantly becomes a point of interest, significantly more attractive to the rest of the room, simply because he is now perceived as, actively desired by someone else.
It's a phenomenon that feels incredibly specific to modern human psychology, right? Like a quirk of social proof that we associate with crowded bars or coffee shops or even like high school cafeterias.
Totally. It feels super high school.
Right. But it's not just some social quirk. It's so much deeper than that.
Yeah, because suddenly he's the most attractive guy in the room, and it feels like a superficial trend.
Yeah.
But we are actually looking at a million-year-old biological survival hack.
An incredibly efficient one, too.
And it's a formalized scientific concept called mate choice copying. So today, on this deep dive, our mission is to trace the exact evolutionary biology behind that specific bar scene.
And we're going to cover a lot of ground today.
We really are. We're tracking this from the urban dating landscape all the way back to complex avian behavioral labs, and then deep into the fierce, high-stakes world of primate sexual selection.
It's going to get pretty wild.
Yeah, it is. Because we are looking at why female mammals, including humans, by the way, are biologically wired to, let the crowd do the vetting for them.
Yeah.
And honestly, by the time we finish this deep dive, you will never look at dating or attraction or even a trip to the zoo the same way again.
Because when you actually break down the mathematics of survival and reproduction, the behavior of those women in that bar, it stops looking like a trend.
Right.
It starts looking like an incredibly sophisticated, energy-saving, evolutionary strategy.
So to really get to the bottom of this, I think we need to bypass the whole human psychology thing for a minute and just look at the raw biological mechanism.
Yeah, let's look at the actual engine of this behavior.
The sources refer to this as mate choice copying, obviously. But the core engine driving it is this thing called public information. And I really want to dig into the caloric and evolutionary cost of that.
The cost is huge. It's everything.
Because logically, if I'm looking for a mate, I should want the available one, right? The guy sitting alone is a zero-friction target. The guy talking to the woman, well, that requires me to compete.
Which seems counterintuitive at first glance.
Exactly. Why would biology wire us to actually prefer the target that requires competition?
Well, because the friction of competition is often significantly lower than the friction of independent evaluation.
Wait, independent evaluation, you mean like figuring it out yourself?
Yeah, think about the cognitive and physical load required to properly vet a mate in a raw biological setting. You have to assess their immune system health, you have to look at their genetic load, their access to resources, their social standing, and, all these hidden behavioral traits.
That sounds exhausting.
It is. If a female is doing that completely independently, she is burning massive amounts of time and metabolic energy. Plus, she's exposing herself to predation while she's observing him.
Oh, because she has to just sit there and watch him instead of hiding.
Right. And the risk of getting it wrong is just catastrophic. Like, if she chooses a mate with a high parasitic load or really poor genetics, her offspring, her entire genetic line just terminates.
Wow. So vetting is essentially this massive biological gamble.
Yeah.
You're putting your actual survival on the line just to gather the data on this guy.
Exactly. But this is where public information completely alters the risk profile. If another female is already, sitting with the mammon in the booth or in nature sharing a nest with a male bird, she has ostensibly already done all that heavy lifting.
She did the hard work, so you don't have to.
Precisely. She has already absorbed that caloric cost of vetting him, so by simply observing her positive reaction, the observing female can appropriate all that data for free.
That is so smart.
The male is no longer an unknown variable, right? He is a proven, thoroughly vetted commodity.
Okay, let's unpack this with an analogy because I love this. It's the evolutionary equivalent of walking down the street in a new city and seeing two identical restaurants.
Oh yeah, the restaurant analogy is perfect for this.
Right. So one restaurant is completely empty and the other one has a line literally out the door. Now, I don't need to read the menu or inspect the kitchen of the busy restaurant to know the food is probably better.
You just assume it is.
Exactly. I am outsourcing the quality control to the crowd because the crowd has already taken the risk of eating there.
Yeah.
They wouldn't be in line if it was terrible. So the women in the bar are essentially treating that first woman's laughter as like a 5-star biological Yelp review.
That is precisely the mechanism. You are using a heuristic to completely bypass a complex analytical process. And while the restaurant analogy perfectly illustrates the human side of things, the actual empirical data proving just how deeply ingrained this is, it doesn't actually come from human sociology.
No. Where does it come from?
It comes from ornithology. Some of the most rigorous modeling of mate choice copying happens with birds.
Which honestly seems like a massive leap to me. Like we go from a Friday night at a bar to a bird laboratory in Germany.
It sounds crazy, but it works.
But the sources do point heavily to this work coming out of the University of Siegen, specifically these experiments conducted by researcher Nina Neal and her team. And they were studying the zebrafinch.
Yes, the classic zebrafinch studies.
Now, I understand using primates for human behavioral models, right, or related, but why the zebrafinch?
Well, the zebrafinch, or Taenia pidgeotata, if we're being formal,
Naturally.
is the absolute perfect vector for studying this because of their extreme social structure. In the wild, they live in these massive, highly interactive flocks.
So they're basically always hanging out together.
Always. They are constantly monitoring each other, creating these really dense, high-speed information networks. They are essentially built for social learning.
Like a biological gossip network.
Exactly like a gossip network. If a behavior provides an advantage, it ripples through a zebra-finch flock exponentially faster than it ever would in, say, a solitary species.
So Nina Neal and her team decide to leverage that gossip network to test this public information theory. And they set up this observation phase where a test female just watches another female interact with a specific male.
Right, a controlled environment.
But the variable they introduce is what absolutely fascinates me. Because if they just used a naturally attractive male bird, you couldn't actually prove the test female was copying, right?
Exactly, because she might just independently recognize, hey, he has great genetics.
Right. So they had to invent a trait.
They had to completely divorce the experiment from any natural biological fitness markers. So the researchers introduced these completely artificial ornaments.
Artificial ornaments. What does that look like on a bird?
Well, they literally glued a bright red crest feather to the head of a male zebrafinch. Or in some cases, they place these highly unnatural, brightly colored plastic rings right around his legs.
Glued a feather to his head.
Yeah. These are traits that absolutely do not exist in the natural evolutionary history of the species. They carry zero intrinsic genetic value.
So you have this male bird walking around looking like a complete biological anomaly, basically wearing a bright red feather hat.
He must have looked ridiculous to them initially.
And the test female sits behind a partition and just watches another female seemingly accept him, right? She preens him, and they hang out for an extended period, like a couple weeks, the sources say.
Yes. The researchers forced the illusion of a highly successful pairing. And then comes the critical phase. The test female is removed from that observation setup and placed in a mate choice arena.
Okay, so now it's her turn to pick.
Right. She's presented with a lineup of males, including the one with the red feather, and she gets to make her own independent selection.
And she aggressively prefers the bird with the red feather.
Overwhelmingly so.
Which is wild.
Yeah.
She completely ignores the natural, unornamented males who, biologically speaking, are the much safer, more proven evolutionary bet. And she just goes for the artificial mutation simply because she saw another female tolerate it.
Yeah, she completely overrides her innate species recognition in favor of the social proof.
Ah,
But what's fascinating here is that the data gets even more profound than that.
so.
The test females didn't just want that specific male, they generalized the artificial trait across the entire population.
Wait, I want to make sure I'm really understanding the scale of this. You're saying that if she sees bird A with a red feather get chosen, and then later she's presented with, like, bird B and bird C who also have red feathers,
Yeah.
she will prefer them too, even though they are complete strangers.
Yes. She extracts that specific physical trait from the individual male and elevates it to a generalized standard of attractiveness.
That is mind-blowing.
It really is. The sources note this doesn't just happen with plumage either. In some species, females generalize to specific colors or even artificial song patterns. The trait itself just becomes imbued with this extreme reproductive value solely through social endorsement.
That is terrifyingly fast cultural transmission. I mean, it proves that attraction is not this fixed biological absolute,
Yeah.
right? It's highly fluid and completely socially negotiated.
Yes, very fluid.
So if we translate that back to our bar scene, if a guy walks in wearing like an absurd neon green jacket,
Hmm.
and a highly attractive woman happens to sit down and enthusiastically flirt with him,
Right, creating the social proof.
it's not just that other women might suddenly find him attractive. They might subconsciously start scanning the room looking for other men in neon green jackets.
Which sounds ridiculous, but biologically that's what's happening.
An entirely arbitrary, meaningless trait becomes a biological trend overnight just because one female seemingly endorsed it.
Exactly. And when you extrapolate that over, say, thousands of generations, you really begin to see how seemingly arbitrary physical traits can suddenly explode within a species.
But wait, this brings up a really crucial evolutionary paradox.
What's that?
We've established that it saves time to copy, and we see how fast it spreads. But evolution doesn't reward time saving if the end result is genetic failure, right?
No, evolution is pretty unforgiving about that.
Exactly. So if that first female is simply making a mistake,
Mm.
or if she's mating with a highly attractive male who has, like, terrible paternal instincts,
Yeah.
the observing female is just copying her way into an evolutionary dead end.
Yes, that's the risk.
So why rely so heavily on the choices of others when the stakes are literally the survival of your lineage?
Yeah.
Why risk it?
Well, this leads us right into the sexy sun hypothesis.
Which, by the way, has to be one of the greatest terms in all of evolutionary biology.
Oh, absolutely. It's perfectly named.
Yeah.
And the sources explore this heavily in the context of the pied flycatcher, which is another type of bird. And the math here is just brutal. We are talking about polygynous males. So these are the guys who have multiple female partners simultaneously.
Okay. Player birds.
Exactly. If a female chooses a polygynous mate, she is effectively condemning herself to single motherhood in the wild.
Right, because he's busy.
Yeah, he's not going to be around to help incubate the eggs. He's not foraging for food for her. He's off with his other partners. So her infant mortality rate naturally has to skyrocket.
So why on earth would a female use mate choice copying to intentionally select a male who is guaranteed to abandon her, rather than just picking, a lonely available male who would dedicate 100% of his resources to her offspring?
It seems entirely counterintuitive. I mean, until you shift the time frame of the genetic payoff.
Shift the time frame, like looking further into the future.
Yes, you are absolutely right that her immediate reproductive effort is going to be intensely difficult. And the risk to that specific clutch of eggs is much higher. But the sexy sun hypothesis dictates that the female is playing a multi-generational numbers game.
Oh, wow. Okay.
By mating with a highly attractive, proven polygynous male, she is acquiring premium, socially validated genetics. The trade-off is that while she suffers in the short term, she will give birth to male offspring who inherit their father's hyper-attractive traits.
Wait, so she's suffering now so that her sons inherit the red feather or the complex song or whatever the equivalent is?
Precisely. Her sons will grow up to be the highly attractive polygynous males of the next generation.
Right.
They will attract multiple females, and they will sire an exponential number of grandchildren. So while that female might only successfully raise 2 chicks instead of 4 because she lacked male assistance.
Because it was so hard to do it alone.
Right. If one of those 2 chicks is a sexy son, her long-term genetic footprint completely eclipses the female who played it safe with a monogamous, less attractive male.
That is, she is literally sacrificing her own immediate safety and the volume of her immediate offspring just to guarantee a genetic monopoly in the 3rd generation.
It is incredibly ruthless biological calculus.
It really is.
Yeah.
And it completely reframes mate choice copying for me. Like, it's not just a lazy shortcut to avoid vetting. It's an active, high-risk investment strategy.
That's a great way to put it.
You copy the crowd because the crowd dictates what the next generation will find attractive. If you don't copy, your sons won't be attracted to the future crowd.
And that's the engine of what evolutionary biologists call Fisherian runaway selection.
Runaway selection.
Yeah, the preference for the trait and the trait itself become genetically linked, and they just accelerate each other. And mate choice copying acts as the accelerant pedal.
Oh, I see.
It really explains why we see such exaggerated, seemingly burdensome traits in nature. Think about a peacock. The sheer metabolic cost of a peacock's tail makes him highly vulnerable to predators, right?
Yeah, he can barely fly. He's just walking around dragging this massive, heavy thing.
Exactly. But because the females have collectively agreed that the tail is the metric of value, any female who chooses a male without one guarantees her sons will be evolutionary failures. They'll be safe from predators, but they'll never mate.
Man. Okay, so the avian models give us this crystal clear look at the mathematical strategy of intersexual selection, right? The whole beauty pageant aspect where females are the judges.
Right.
But obviously humans aren't birds.
Thankfully.
Right. And the social pressures and physical realities of a zebra finch don't really map perfectly onto the human experience in a dimly lit bar. So to get closer to our own biology, the sources force us to pivot into the primate family tree.
And the primate landscape is significantly more violent and complex.
It is.
Yeah.
Because to understand primate romance, we really have to look at the tension between natural selection and sexual selection. These are two very different things.
Extremely different.
Yeah.
Natural selection is straightforward. It's about traits that increase your chances of surviving long enough to reach reproductive age.
Like camouflage or running fast.
Exactly. Survival of the fittest. But sexual selection is specifically about traits that exist purely to boost your chances of actually securing a mate once you get there.
Like the peacock tail.
Right. And in primates, sexual selection often violently overpowers natural selection. And it takes two primary forms. You have intersexual selection, which is the female choice beauty pageant we just discussed with the birds. And then you have intersexual selection.
Intersexual, meaning competition within the same sex.
Yeah.
So essentially male-on-male combat.
Exactly. While the birds heavily lean on the female-judged beauty pageant, many primate societies lean heavily on the heavyweight boxing match.
So it's basically a heavyweight boxing match versus a beauty pageant.
That's a perfect way to put it. It's males physically fighting other males to secure exclusive reproductive access to females. And this leads to extreme sexual dimorphism.
Dimorphism meaning they look different.
Yeah, drastic physical differences between the sexes, where the males evolve to look drastically different from the females, primarily by becoming massive and heavily armed.
Right. Let's actually look at how these two forms of selection manifest across different primate species, because the source material provides this really stark gallery of evolutionary strategies.
It's a great lineup.
If we start at the far end of the intersexual spectrum, so the pure boxers, we're looking at the mountain gorillas.
The mountain gorilla is the quintessential example of male-male competition driving biology. Gorilla societies are generally structured around a harem model.
So one guy in charge.
One mature, dominant male, the silverback, monopolizes reproductive access to a whole group of females. And because the winner takes all, the evolutionary pressure on males to win that physical dominance is absolute.
And that explains the anatomy, doesn't it? Because I've always wondered about this. Gorillas are essentially peaceful herbivores. They spend their days eating, like, celery and leaves.
Mostly, yeah.
Yet they possess these terrifying 2-inch-long canine teeth and such massive muscle density. And they aren't hunting prey. They aren't taking down gazelles.
No, not at all. The teeth and the muscle mass are purely weapons of intersexual combat. They are adapted specifically for fighting other male gorillas. The metabolic cost of building and maintaining a 400-pound frame on a diet of foliage is just staggering. But the evolutionary math demands it, because a smaller male simply will not secure a harem.
So in this system, the female's active choice is somewhat suppressed, right? Her mate is largely determined by whichever male survives the gauntlet to become the silverback.
Right. The boxing match completely supersedes the beauty pageant here.
But then we look at orangutans, and the strategy shifts into something far stranger. It's still driven by male dominance, but it's heavily mediated by hormonal and physical signaling, not just sheer violence.
Orangutans present a really fascinating case of what we call bimaturism.
Imaturism.
Yes. In the wild, dominant male orangutans develop these massive fleshy cheek pads known as flanges. They also develop this massive throat sac for projecting long calls through the jungle. These flanges make the male's face look incredibly wide and imposing.
So it's a literal physical manifestation of social status. You can't just act tough. Your face actually expands to show it.
Precisely. And growing these flanges requires a massive surge in testosterone and metabolic resources. But here's what's incredible. Subordinate adult males will literally suppress their own development.
Wait, they suppress it on purpose?
Yeah. They will remain unflanged, looking almost indistinguishable from females for years or even decades.
Just flying under the radar.
Exactly, simply to avoid triggering the aggression of the dominant flanged male. But the rule of the jungle is that females aggressively prefer the flanged males. It's an intrasexual signal of dominance to other males, sure, but it serves as a massive intersexual beacon to the females. Only the males who develop these traits mate successfully.
Okay, so we have the brute force of the gorilla, and we have the hormonal flanging of the orangutan. But do any primates rely purely on the beauty pageant? Like, is there a primate equivalent to the zebra finch's red feather, where the males are just desperately trying to look pretty for the females?
Yes, and the most vibrant example of that is the mandrill.
Oh, I know mandrills.
Mandrills are those large terrestrial primates renowned for their incredibly vivid facial coloration. They have these bright red stripes down the muzzle, flanked by neon blue ridges, and they have similarly brilliant coloration on their hindquarters.
It looks completely unnatural, like almost like war paint.
It really does.
How does that evolve? Because having a bright blue and red face in the jungle seems like a terrible natural selection trait if you're trying to hide from leopards.
Oh, it is a terrible survival trait. It makes them highly visible, but it is an unparalleled reproductive trait. Mandrills are a textbook example of female-driven intersexual selection.
So the females are the judges here.
The females are the absolute arbiters of mating success, and they judge the males based entirely on the intensity of those colors. And the reason this works, the reason the females trust this public information, is because the color is an unfakeable indicator of genetic health.
Explain the unfakeable part. Because, like with the zebrafinch, the researchers literally fake the red feather with glue. Why can't a weak mandrill just grow a blue face?
Because the pigmentation is intrinsically tied to testosterone in the immune system. Producing those incredibly bright red and blue hues requires the male to be in absolute peak physical condition.
Oh, I see.
And here's the catch. Testosterone is actually an immunosuppressant.
Wait, really? It lowers your immune system?
Yes. So if a male can pump his body full of enough testosterone to produce those neon colors and still fight off the massive parasite load found in the jungle environment, he is signaling to the female that his immune system genes are practically bulletproof.
Oh, wow.
If he gets sick, or if he loses a fight, or if his social standing drops, the colors physically fade, they literally lose their brightness.
That is incredible. So his face is literally a real-time dashboard of his immune system.
A live feed of his health.
The females don't need to do any complex vetting at all. They just look at who have the brightest neon face, and they instantly have the most accurate genetic data possible. It's a perfectly honest signal.
It's highly efficient. But these systems, the gorilla's harem, the mandrill's colors, they rely on a relatively clear social hierarchy. The primate landscape gets truly chaotic when we look at our closest genetic relatives, the chimpanzees.
Right, because chimpanzee social structures completely dismantle the idea of a single winner, don't they?
Completely.
They live in these large, highly fluid communities, and their mating system is, well, aggressively promiscuous.
Exactly. Unlike the gorilla silverback, who tries to monopolize all access to the females, female chimpanzees will mate with multiple males during their estrus cycle.
So everybody gets a turn, basically.
Well, there is still a male dominance hierarchy, and the alpha male fights fiercely to guard the fertile females. But he simply cannot watch everyone all the time. The physical landscape of the jungle and the sheer size of the community make it physically impossible.
So the heavyweight boxing match still happens. Males are still forming coalitions and fighting for alpha status to get priority access. But the fight doesn't actually end when the mating happens.
Not at all.
Because if she sneaks off into the bushes and mates with a subordinate male 10 minutes later, who actually wins the genetic lottery? It's a toss-up.
And this is where the evolutionary adaptations get microscopic and, frankly, extreme.
Extreme how?
Because multiple males are mating with the same female in a very short window, The intersexual competition literally moves from the jungle floor into the female's reproductive tract. We are talking about sperm competition.
Verm competition, so it's like a biological Cold War. If you can't stop the other males from mating with her physically, you just have to outgun them internally.
Precisely. Millions of years of this promiscuous mating system have forced massive anatomical adaptations. Because male chimpanzees face intense sperm competition, they have evolved incredibly large testicles relative to their overall body size.
How large are we talking?
We were talking about testicles that weigh roughly the same as their brains.
Wait, seriously, their brains.
Yes. The evolutionary strategy is pure volume and velocity. They produce massive quantities of highly mobile, incredibly fast sperm. And not only that, their seminal fluid actually coagulates to form a physical plug in the reproductive tract.
Oh, blood?
Yeah, attempting to physically block the sperm of the next male who mates with her.
It is a literal microscopic arms race.
Wow.
Yeah.
And the sources actually compare this directly to gibbons to prove how fluid this biology is based on social structure, right?
Yes, the gibbon comparison is the perfect control group here. Gibbons are these arboreal apes that are strictly monogamous. They form tight, long-term pair bonds, and they fiercely defend their shared territory together.
So they mate for life.
Basically. Because a male gibbon is guaranteed exclusive reproductive access to his mate, he faces absolutely zero sperm competition.
He doesn't have to worry about the guy in the bushes. Exactly. And because the body is an incredibly strict economy, it refuses to waste metabolic energy on weapons it doesn't need. Consequently, male gibbons have evolved incredibly small testicles and produce very low volumes of sperm. The use it or lose it principle of evolution applies directly to their anatomy.
That makes total sense. Now, the sources explicitly bring human anatomy into this context, which is fascinating and, maybe a little uncomfortable for some, but we have to look at the data.
It's purely biological.
Right. Where do humans fall on this spectrum between the completely monogamous small tests gibbon and the hyper-promiscuous massive tests chimpanzee? Because it tells us a lot about how our ancestors actually behaved, regardless of what our modern social norms are today.
The human anatomical archive is very revealing here. According to the evolutionary biology outlined in the sources, humans fall somewhere in the middle, but with highly specific adaptations.
Okay, lay it on me.
Human males have moderate testicle size, larger relative to body size than gorillas or gibbons, but significantly smaller than chimpanzees. This suggests a history of moderate, but not extreme, sperm competition.
So we weren't totally monogamous, but we weren't chimps either.
Right. However, the human penis is relatively long and thick compared to all other great apes.
Okay. And how does evolutionary biology explain that specific divergence? Why did we evolve that way?
Researchers posit that this is the result of thousands of generations of complex intersexual and intersexual selection. The anatomical structure may have evolved to facilitate deeper semen placement or even to dynamically displace the semen of rival males.
Displace it, right?
Yeah, a direct physical adaptation to historical sperm competition, suggesting early human societies were far less monogamous than the gibbon model. Simultaneously, these traits may have been heavily reinforced by female mate choice over millennia. If females preferred certain traits, they got passed on.
So our physical anatomy is literally a fossil record of our ancestral dating habits.
It really is. It tells a story.
But wait, we are focusing so heavily on the males here. Their sperm velocity, their canine teeth, their bright blue faces. It makes it sound like the females are just these passive environments where this competition happens.
Right, which is a common misconception.
But the sources actually highlight that the females are actively manipulating this entire process.
Oh, absolutely. The females are the architects of the competition. They don't just passively accept the outcome, they initiate the chaos.
Give me an example.
Returning to chimpanzees. When a female enters estrus, she develops highly visible, brightly colored sexual swellings on her hindquarters.
Oh, right. Like a massive, unmistakable biological billboard.
Exactly. She is aggressively advertising her fertility to the entire community, and the evolutionary logic here is brilliant.
Because she wants them to fight.
Yes. By advertising to everyone simultaneously, she instantly triggers the male competition. She incites the males to compete both physically and via sperm competition, ensuring that only the absolute strongest, most dominant, or most genetically robust sperm actually fertilizes her egg.
So she is utilizing the male aggression to filter the genetics for her.
Precisely. She sets the stage.
She is essentially throwing a piece of meat into a shark tank and just letting the shark sort out who is the strongest.
That is exactly what she's doing.
But what happens in a species where the male brute force is so overwhelming that the female's choice is completely bypassed? I'm thinking about baboons here.
Baboons are fascinating.
The baboons are massive,
Yeah.
aggressive, right? They have terrifying canines, and the males are significantly larger than the females. If a dominant male baboon decides he is going to mate with a female, she cannot physically stop him. It seems like a complete victory for the heavyweight boxer and a total loss of agency for the female.
It definitely looks that way to the naked eye. If a dominant male baboon violently chases off rivals and forces a mating, the intersexual combat appears to have succeeded completely.
Right.
But this brings us to one of the most phenomenal discoveries in primate biology, and honestly, the absolute pinnacle of female evolutionary strategy. Cryptic female choice.
Cryptic, meaning hidden. Hidden from the males and hidden from outside observers. So how does a female exercise choice after the mating has already occurred?
Because the evolutionary battleground doesn't actually end at intercourse. Even if a female is physically overpowered and forced to mate with a hyper-aggressive male that she finds genetically undesirable, her reproductive tract is not a passive hallway.
Okay.
It is a highly complex, chemically active maze. Female baboons, and females of many other species, have evolved the ability to chemically and physically manipulate the environment inside their own bodies to select which sperm succeeds.
Wait, are you serious? She can actively filter the sperm post-mating?
Yes. Say she mated with a subordinate, perhaps less aggressive but genetically healthier male earlier in the day, and then later she is forced to mate with a dominant bully.
Right.
Her body can subtly alter its pH levels to make the internal environment hostile to the dominant male's sperm.
Oh, wow. Wait, she does it chemically.
Yeah, exactly. It's a chemical veto. She can deploy specialized immune responses to attack his specific genetic markers or physically impede the progress of his sperm while facilitating the passage of the preferred male's sperm toward the egg.
That is absolutely mind-blowing. It completely upends the whole narrative of the helpless female in the wild.
Completely turns it on its head.
Because the males are out there screaming, beating their chests, growing massive teeth, assuming they are in complete control of the genetic future. And the female can just quietly, on a molecular level, hit the veto button.
She lets the bully think he won to avoid physical injury, but her biology secretly ensures that the genes of the male she actually prefers are the ones that survive.
It is the ultimate assertion of intersexual agency. It proves that no matter how intense the male-male competition gets, the female retains this microscopic, undeniable level of control over her own reproduction.
It's incredible, and it shows how deep this goes.
We have covered an immense amount of ground here today.
We really have.
We started with zebra finches generalizing fake red feathers. We looked at the brutal, multi-generational math of the sexy sun hypothesis. We moved to the gorilla's silverback violence, the mandrill's unfakeable immune system dashboard, the chimpanzee's microscopic arms race, and finally, the secret chemical veto power of the baboon.
It is an incredibly dense, multi-layered landscape of evolutionary pressure.
So I want to bring this entire biological framework back to where we started. Let's walk back into that crowded, dimly lit bar on a Friday night.
Back to the human scene.
Right. There's our human female. She is scanning the room. The guy sitting alone in the booth is practically invisible to her. But the moment another woman sits down, laughs, and engages with him, the female observer suddenly feels that undeniable spark of attraction. Based on the deep dive we just took through all these sources, what is our final verdict on her behavior?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the verdict is that she is executing an incredibly sophisticated, highly optimized evolutionary program. We so often dismiss human dating behaviors as superficial, right? Or we blame them on toxic social media trends.
Right. Oh, she just wants what someone else has.
Exactly. But what we are seeing in that bar is the manifestation of millions of years of female mate choice, which is arguably the most powerful evolutionary driver on the planet.
Whether it's a finch looking for a red feather or a baboon exercising cryptic choice, the female is always looking for the highest fidelity data with the lowest possible caloric risk.
Exactly. While male primates have spent millions of years relying on brute force-growing massive canines, building harems, and just fighting each other into exhaustion, females have evolved brilliant energy-saving heuristics, and mate choice copying is one of the smartest.
Just so elegant.
By desiring the man who is already chatting with another woman in the bar, the human female observer might be acting out an ancient, highly efficient evolutionary script. She's letting someone else do the dangerous vetting process.
She is trusting the biological Yelp review.
Right. She is bypassing the danger of vetting a stranger, relying on public information to guarantee that if she invests her time, her metabolic energy, and potentially her genetics into this man, he is a proven commodity.
And deep down in her biological programming, she is playing the multi-generational math of the sexy son hypothesis. She wants the man other women want because she wants her future sons to be the men that other women want.
It is evolutionary chess, played out over cocktails in real time. She isn't being superficial, she's being genetically hyper-efficient.
That completely changes how I view social dynamics, honestly. So, to our listener, the next time you are out and you feel that sudden, inexplicable gravitational pull towards someone who just happens to be the center of attention, I want you to take a step back.
Ask yourself what's really happening.
Exactly. Ask yourself, are you evaluating this person objectively based on their actual merits? Or are you just booting up a million-year-old software program and utilizing public information? Are you making an independent choice, or are you just copying the flock?
It's a vital question for navigating modern relationships.
It really is. Well, that wraps up our journey from the avian laboratories of Germany to the jungles of the silverbacks and back to the modern dating scene. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the hidden architecture of attraction.
It was a pleasure unpacking the sheer complexity of these biological forces.
But before we sign off, I want to leave you with one final provocative thought to mull over on your own.
Oh, a closing thought.
We've established today that mate choice copying, in its natural biological state, relies entirely on authentic, visible public information, right? Like seeing a bird's red feather or seeing a man physically talking to a woman in a bar. It requires genuine social friction.
Real-world evidence.
Right. But think about the digital ecosystem we live in right now.
Oh, the landscape has fundamentally changed.
Entirely. How do modern digital environments artificially hack this ancient evolutionary shortcut? When you are swiping on a dating app and an algorithm places a highly rated badge on a profile, or when you are scrolling through social media and you see someone with 2 million followers and a verified checkmark, are you still making a biological choice?
Or are you being manipulated?
Exactly. Have user interfaces and engagement algorithms completely hijacked your primal instinct to copy the crowd? Have we allowed tech companies to replace the zebra finch's red feather with a digital follower count, basically weaponizing our own evolutionary programming against us?
That is a terrifying thought.
So next time you swipe right because a profile looks popular, ask yourself who is really making the choice, your biology or the algorithm? Keep questioning everything. We'll see you on the next Deep Dive.